Good morning, everyone. My name is Heidi Decker. I'm the Marketing Manager for Smart Deploy, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here today for our 30-minute webcast. Today's webcast is the deployment tool analysis. It's part two. It's kind of a follow-up session to a webcast that we did in September that was based on the data from the same study, the Passmark study. So we'll dig into that. I'd like to do just a few quick introductions and let you know who's in the room with us today. We have Spencer Dunford, our Director of Sales, Eric Nymark, our Systems Engineer, Alan Marsh, our CTO, and Aaron Suzuki, Smart Deploy CEO and Founder. So we are going to go ahead and jump right in. Watch for some poll questions to show up on your screen there. If you can answer those, that kind of helps us guide the conversation a little bit. We also have the chat and the Q&A feature on the right-hand side if you have questions as the presentation goes, but we'll also do a few minutes of kind of open Q&A at the end of this session. So we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand things over to Aaron Suzuki.
Thanks, Heidi. So quick background on the business. A few of you have joined us before, but we have been around for almost 10 years and started out doing IT services, especially services to large technology manufacturers who were redistributing a lot of systems and system images and virtual machines. And in the course of doing all this work, we realized some recurring problems existed and thought there was a convenient and intelligent way to solve those problems with tools. And over time, those tools turned into real software, and that is where Smart Deploy came from. We've been acknowledged with some very nice awards from various media outlets over the years and have a really nice story, we think, to tell today. So we're going to go through and talk about the results and then drill into greater detail on each of the solutions and talk about both strengths and weaknesses, including our own. And we want to be sure to leave time for Q&A as well as some dissection of the different results and what it all means. So as we look at the test results, we listed them in descending order or ascending order of fastest to slowest in terms of time to complete tasks. And generally, we didn't include time for troubleshooting. We assumed that everyone knew what they were doing and could go from beginning to end and march right through the process. So there were some problems that Passmark ran into, and some things hung them up as they were getting support for some of these issues. We were helping them with some of them. They went to the manufacturers for support on other issues, but managed to do the three tasks shown on this slide. First, create the image and collect the drivers required to perform a redeployment. Second, deploy the image. And then last, perform an update to that image and deploy the updated image. And you can see that MDT took the most amount of time. Acronis Snap Deploy was on the same order of magnitude in terms of amount of time required to perform those three tasks. Next was Symantec Ghost, and then quickest of all by almost 50% is Smart Deploy Enterprise, and we're going to talk about exactly why. It's important to note that since we first ran this, there have been a couple of updates. The update to the MDT is incremental and really I don't think would have a meaningful impact on the amount of time it takes. Acronis had a major release. I believe Snap Deploy 4 is out now. We have not since tested it, although based on their description of the product, I don't know how meaningful the process change would be to the overall time required to perform this work. So I think that the actual times might vary incrementally, but overall you'll see some consistent results with latest tools as well. So looking at the results for one computer, we've highlighted the download and package drivers because that's one of the places we see the largest and most consistent difference in the amount of time required. And Smart Deploy has a very simple and convenient way of collecting and packaging the drivers for deployment. And it also does it in a way that allows it to be hardware completely platform independent out of the box. Not only hardware independent, but also virtualization platform independent out of the box, whereas the other solutions either require additional tools, in some cases that are required to pay for, or it's all manual, an end-to-end manual process. There are some disparities as well in other times. I think that there's a little bit of an anomalous result in the deployment time required for Snap Deploy in this case, but Passmark had the same results in multiple tests and decided to report that accordingly.
Yeah, and like Aaron mentioned here, a lot of the time savings is in the download and packaging and drivers. So with Smart Deploy, there's kind of a service-based part to our product where a lot of those platform packs for specific business class models are up on a website, and the time there is really just to download it. And again, like Aaron mentioned, the kind of anomaly with deploying as far as Snap Deploy goes, that could have been fixed in this release, this latest 4.0 release from them, because a lot of their boot media drivers are kind of, you can't manage those offline. So they're bundled into the package and you don't have the opportunity to add a specific network driver. So we think that could have, caused some of the deployment stress there and incremented the time.
Great.
Which is kind of an important distinction, that you're waiting for that vendor to go and make those updates, and you're relying on their update schedule for you to be able to, perform your deployment tasks if that's the tool that you chose to use.
Yeah, that makes sense too. I think looking likewise at the next slide, the five computer results just amplifies what both Eric and Spencer were just saying. You can deploy 5 computers at once, so the deploy image to a computer really stays the same, but it's that download and packaging drivers. Assuming you have 5 different models, you have to repeat the entire process, whatever that process is for each solution, 5 different times. And you can imagine most organizations, Smart Deploy, we are a relatively small independent software company. Even we have more than 5 models that we support for our approximately 100 employees that we have. In large organizations with, hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of computers, the problem gets greatly amplified. And so we see that disparity stretch out, and we're still markedly quicker deploying with Smart Deploy Enterprise versus the other products, simply because, as Eric noted, you're downloading a prepackaged set of drivers that are going to work perfectly and reliably for that device every time, versus the other solutions that might only provide certain drivers required for boot, or that would help you get through the deployment process and then kind of leave you to your own devices at the end. Or in the case of MDT, that have a very high technical bar that leaves you to complete a lot of the technical work, that can do some of the same things as Smart Deploy, but is much more technically oriented. And we'll look at some of those details next. So starting with MDT. Obviously MDT is great because it's free. And in a lot of the community sites, you see discussions on everywhere from TechNet to LinkedIn about, should I use MDT or not? And there are a lot of great advocates, and it does work. Obviously, even Passmark, that is sort of an IT generalist house. They're not by any stretch a deployment specialty benchmarking house, was able to get this work. It's quite flexible because you can do really anything you like. It's an open set of commands that you can run to customize and automate end-to-end. However, it requires you to know how to do all of this work. So one of the great drawbacks is the technical requirement and the level of expertise for you to be able to be proficient with this tool set. If you're not, then the ramp-up time can be quite extensive. And obviously the time to collect and get everything organized and orchestrated to perform a deployment effectively also is much, much higher. And that's what's really depicted with this benchmark study. MDT came in as the most time-consuming solution, by a fair amount, and that excludes the ramp-up time, troubleshooting time, setup time to get everything organized and orchestrated. So that's something to be sensitive to, where time is of the greatest value to us as IT professionals. We have to consider the total cost of a solution and not just the fact that there is no upfront cost of acquiring the software to begin with. And I think that that's something that we can easily overlook, and I know that a lot of our customers and associates have a lot of frustration trying to work with this solution, and but likewise have equal problems trying to justify cost in acquiring a premium solution like the others in our study. So we're sensitive to that as well.
Yeah, that's an important distinction that doesn't really necessarily get reflected in all the numbers here, right? We tried to do this study as fair as possible, or hand off to Passmark. You know, here are suggestions to keep everybody same on the even keel. And what isn't reflected is training and ramp up on each product and how long it takes to go and learn it and so forth. And even just the task of downloading drivers, well, that makes the big assumption that you know what to do with them once you've downloaded them. So there's a lot of sort of intangible benefits that aren't reflected in these graphs as you just talk about time. So as you expand that out, think about what that really means for your organization and the level of expertise that your team has to be able to perform these functions. Do they really know how to go fix Device Manager so it's clean every time on every device, and what to do with each driver, and how to get that stitched into the deployment tool that you've chosen and so forth? So just things to consider.
Yeah, one other note in the plus column for MDT is that this product, or this tool set, is created by the manufacturer that creates Windows. And so you have to expect that there's going to be some capability there that would not exist in other products. And so there's something to be said for that. They use latest tools and techniques, and I think that there are some potential advantages to that. The drawbacks are just how much time and effort is it going to take to get to a place where that's working efficiently and effectively for you. Next solution, Acronis SnapDeploy. SnapDeploy is an interesting product. It's pretty popular in part because it's slightly less expensive than Ghost. And it's been out there for a little while. It uses a sector-based image, which is different than MDT, which uses the file-based WIM imaging format. So there are both pluses and minuses to working with a sector-based imaging format. I see more minuses than pluses. We put it in the plus column here simply because it does give you back exactly what you captured. So from a backup and restore perspective, this is, you know, a format that would work for that, and they make solutions like that, and Ghost can be used for that as well. Other drawbacks, however, are that you have to buy additional products to really achieve hardware independence. Likewise, you have to buy additional products to deploy to server. So really, buying SnapDeploy would get you to a certain point, but to get all the way in terms of maximizing flexibility and fluidity, deploy to workstation and server, to deploy to any hardware device or virtualization platform, you're looking at spending additional money. The file format, likewise, is proprietary, so you don't have the same degree of flexibility as you do with solutions like MDT or SmartDeploy. And their approach to driver provisioning only provides mass storage drivers, so one boot critical device driver is really all you get. And finally, this was a very time-consuming solution. It was right up there in terms of total time with MDT, so that's something to be aware of as well, is that this is can be a time-consuming undertaking, especially if you have a large volume of systems to deploy. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, I think the other, you know, two big points to sort of reiterate that even if you pay the extra money for SnapDeploy to get their hardware independence piece, it only gets you the target device to boot. You're still fully on the hook yourself to go and download and find the chipset driver and the audio driver and the video driver and all that kind of stuff as well. Or if you do want to rely on an additional third party, and you can pay additional money to get their package. But again, you're reliant on them to go and update their packages on their time when they're able to do so. And in generally, it just causes extra bloat in the images themselves, so your image library grows, and file size can be a consideration in terms of storage and bandwidth that it takes to go and apply that. And there's also a direct relationship between time it takes to apply an image and how large that image is and how many drivers it has to go through and look at and see, am I the right one for this device, and so on. So there's definitely ways to improve and make this entire process more efficient, and we'll get to that.
That's a very, very good point, Spencer. I think that that's another element that this study does not take into consideration is some of these real-world scenario-based circumstances, meaning that if you have a very large, diverse inventory of devices, then you are going to carry around a lot more drivers. And what does that mean, and what are the impacts on deployment time related to that? So we might see the gap widen between the amount of time required for Smart Deploy versus the other solutions based on some of those real-world things. But again, keeping things truly apples to apples, we have clearly a very compelling story here. So now moving on to Ghost, very interesting, market-dominating solution even among our attendees. And the poll question Heidi just posted, fully 20% of the people who responded use Ghost today. So it's very well known, and it's had some commonality over time. So it has an existing knowledge base among people in organizations, globally speaking. So we note tribal knowledge here in the first bullet. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. Overall, the solution is quite similar to Snap Deploy on multiple levels. First, it uses a sector-based imaging format, and the same pros and cons are associated with that. It has similar characteristics in terms of hardware independence. Symantec does provide you with a couple of drivers, specifically networking and mass storage. So it'll get you a certain part of the way, but it stops there. So there are some potential challenges around getting hardware independence done. And again, you might be in a situation where you're either buying a third-party tool, and likewise for server, you'd for sure be purchasing an additional or separate tool that would be generally multiple times more expensive. We have also in the cons list, support is challenging. I think that this is common with any very large software company where you're going through multiple tiers of support and really looking for that individual who has the expertise, who can get you a quick answer to your question. And in no way was our experience quick or efficient in this regard. And we've gotten that same feedback from many of our customers. Perhaps some of you had great experiences. We know that there are a lot of great fans of this product still, and we know that it has some strengths. Again, the legacy being one of the greatest among that.
Yeah, and another thing to mention that's a commonality across all three of these solutions that we've been talking about is when you're capturing your reference image, so you build out this beautiful system, now it's set up just the way you like it. You then have to go back and run a Microsoft-supported deployment tool called SysPrep to generalize all the unique information about that machine. That is inherently a destructive task. So after running that 3 times or 9 times without rearming the licensing, you kind of trashed your reference machine and you need to start over. And that time, although it's not added into this study at all, it can be a big increase in time, and we hear that a lot from customers as far as having to start all over after you create something, update it a few times, you're starting back from scratch.
Absolutely a great point, Eric, and I think that speaks as well to the element of the real world scenario and how level of effort plays out over the long term. And some of these things that weren't factored into our study at all can be time-consuming challenges that I think a lot of IT people just accept as a fact of life, when in reality that's part of what we've challenged as not being necessary to the way that these solutions work. And so,
one other thing to put in here is that keep in mind that we did this all keeping everybody using a virtual machine as a starting point. That's not generally how customers use these products today. They will dedicate the exact make and model for each image they want a result of. So that turns into buying additional hardware, storing additional hardware, keeping all those additional hardware devices secure, and then look at what Eric just brought up around SysPrep. You have to do all of that work for each unique machine on top of it. So quickly, it gets unmanageable pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that's another element of cost, and that's something that we didn't really factor in here at all. We've noted which solutions are free and which ones are premium and what have you, but there are these other costs, real hard costs, that build up over time as well, maintaining additional hardware inventory and so on and so forth. Likewise, the pain and challenge of having aging devices, especially for, I'm sure many of you are still running Windows XP, having inventory of those devices, and then all of the challenges associated with finding the right device to be able to create and maintain an image if you're still continuing to do so. So let's look at Smart Deploy Enterprise. Far and away the fastest solution, and I want everyone to know that we didn't undertake this casually. We did this with a healthy bit of skepticism, and our first study we did internally ourselves just to make sure that we weren't going to fall on our faces here and be the most time-consuming one. And our results were very similar to Passmark's, and we were kind of concerned that it wouldn't be plausible. So we went out and got Passmark to do this study, and they came back with these results. Network World, an editor at Network World, undertook a similar study and came out with similar results. He didn't publish the times with the same degree of granularity that there are here, but from 3 different sources, we've got essentially the same results. Not to this minute and second, but overall fastest and slowest, and Smart Deploy consistently outperforms the other solutions in this study. The question is why, and what's going on here, and what are we doing differently that really makes such an interesting difference? The leading reason is really around device driver management, and as we highlighted in the opening slides, that's where, although the other areas, perhaps Smart Deploy is on parity, or we save a few minutes here or there, the real time savings and the time savings over time is dealing with drivers, and that's what's going to be different device to device and platform to platform. So it comes down to flexibility, not only with device drivers, but also the image. So we use the same imaging format as MDT. The difference is that we provide you drivers that are organized and prepackaged in a way that makes them so that they're turnkey. You don't have to really touch any independent drivers or go to each manufacturer's website to get them all. We give you the template and give you a management interface to be able to consolidate them, deduplicate them, and package them along with the image for very efficient deployment. Likewise, the imaging file and the way that we use that image in a virtual machine makes it extremely efficient. So again, part of what wasn't included in this is the ongoing task of SysPrep and so on and so forth. SysPrep with Smart Deploy happens at the time of deployment. So you're never really doing anything to that virtual machine. It's living on in its perfectly healthy state, and you can perform updates to it as often as you like, recapture it as many times as you like over months or years, even include software in that image, which is contrary to prevailing best practice, in part because you have the ability to keep that image updated so easily. So that, along with the hardware independence, makes it incredibly efficient. Couple of the challenges of the product, and we have to admit that we're not perfect and we're not 100% complete. We don't provide a standalone Pixie service, so we're not going to be able to do the push service from Smart Deploy out to tens, hundreds, or thousands of computers in a zero-touch way. We provide some very nice integration with WDS and SCCM and other solutions that provide a Pixie service, But today, with the current version of Smart Deploy, that service does not yet exist. Another challenge is that being a small and relatively young solution, the product is not adopted by tens of thousands of users worldwide, and so we don't have a lot of noise in all the common forums and people providing kind of this peer level of support that you see with Ghost, that you see with MDT, even to a certain extent that you see with Acronis. But we definitely try to make up for that with very hyper-responsive professional support, both through our forum at deploycentral.com and the paid support that you get via email and phone if you purchase the product. So a lot of goodness accompanying Smart Deploy Enterprise.
Yeah, and a few more things to mention here. Kind of on the con side, that we are a new company, but in that respect as well, we're always working to update the product and add new features as we hear back from the customer base. So we have some cool things coming in the future, but we're also on a tighter rev schedule than some of these other solutions as well, just that, we want to integrate things like this Pixie service, and, we're always working with the developers and the customers to try and bring a better product to market that can address some of these pain points that we're hearing back from the community.
Yeah, that's a great point. Not only the ability to take customer feedback and turn that into features that we would add in a relatively short period of time, but also the frequency of updates and our readiness to provide those updates. Okay, let's move on. So we extracted the results out for up to 25 computers, and we saw some interesting results. Eric, do you want to explain a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so I think obviously you can see by the graph here that as you expand this out to more computers and you're supporting more unique models, the time drastically increases for every other product except for Smart Deploy, and that's really because the extrapolation of data here is with Smart Deploy, really driver management, which you're addressing in a one-off fashion for the other solutions, is really done by just downloading the file, adding that into your deployment package, and you're good to go for as many computers as you want. And like Aaron mentioned earlier, it's really hard to standardize on one model of computer. For example, we're a Lenovo shop, right? We have ThinkPad, laptops all in the room here, but as far as IT goes, they support not only just the brand new T420s, but older T410s and T400s, and every organization likes to kind of have a schedule to depreciate those machines, but in a lot of cases, you're keeping models that are a few generations old.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think the other thing is, we talked about the real-world challenges and limitations here. Those aren't factored into this, so the hockey stick effect you see with the other solutions would be even more greatly, I think, exacerbated if we factored in some of those other items. We're kind of running tight on time, but Spencer, do you want to talk through quickly the last few slides here?
Yeah, for sure. So on this slide, a couple of customer quotes. We've amassed a great following of loyal customers, and it's added real value to the organization, I would say. And the real point is giving customers the flexibility to create and manage their images and drivers independently using the existing skill set and talent that they have on the team without a bunch of retraining or retooling. So Smart Deploy is really easy to use. There's powerful features built right in at every step, and it's really best in class for what it does. But the net of it is, as you can see from comments from some of our customers, is it's really impacted the way both large and small organizations do IT, this basic block and tackle of get your corporate image on any device perfectly. So more than anything, we save time, and generally time turns into money. We empower employees to do more and get back to more strategic projects they haven't been able to get to. We help in a lot of scenario-based things that are really common at pretty much every organization, from new employee onboarding to new hardware onboarding to break fix to all those kinds of scenarios. It's faster and easier to use and more straightforward, and eliminates a lot of the headaches traditionally associated with deployment products. There's a lot of inherent benefits that are built right in. Eric mentioned SysPrep. You know, I talked about not dedicating specific hardware for all this. You know, we have no networking requirements whatsoever. You can use this from end to end offline using the existing hardware that you have. So it's really taking all the nice benefits, and people start talking about VDI and all kinds of stuff that are hot today, and we're able to get customers the benefits that they want out of those solutions at a fraction of the cost and knowledge they would traditionally need. So finally, take the Smart Deploy Challenge. Heidi and I wanted to make this fun for you guys, so as a little reward, take us up on our offer. Take the challenge, set up a demo with me or somebody else on the Smart Deploy team, and we'll send you a pair of Skullcandy headphones. Download Smart Deploy. We have a free, fully functioning trial that does everything that the full version does. If you buy it, you're not out any work through the trial. There's no obligation with it. And then if you buy it, then we'll give you a deal. So you guys get 20% off MSRP for going through and doing this, plus the cool headphones. So take the Smart Deploy Challenge. Let us know how we can help you out through our forum. Email us at sales@smartdeploy. Call us at 888-7-DEPLOY. We love to talk about deployment and hear how we can help you solve your current challenges today. And with that in mind, do we have any time for Q&A?
Yeah, we are right up on our 30 minutes. We went a little bit long, but if you have a few minutes to stick around, we have a bunch of questions that have come in, so we'll take a few minutes to answer some of these live with you guys right now. And if we don't get to your questions, we will certainly follow up. I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow that will have a link to this recorded session. I also have quite a few people that are asking for the slides, so I will include those as well in the follow-up email. And we'll also include a link to the full Passmark study. So it's a big, thick report that they put together after doing this study. So we're going to jump right into the Q&A here. Gosh, there's a lot of questions here. Okay, so Ryan wanted to know, are these times all the steps to only install the OS? Did you want to talk about what was included in the image, Aaron?
Yeah, so included in these timings, basically, Passmark went through with each product and took just the raw time it took to, say, capture an image, build the media to, boot the target device and deploy that system. Those times don't include any of the next in the wizards. There's some timing with Ghost and Acronis where drivers were downloaded after the fact. So that time was taken into account in the driver management. But the creation of the reference machine isn't included in that time.
Okay, thank you. Carlos wants to know, is your tech support US-based or at least easy to communicate with in English?
Yeah, so Smart Deploy support is based in Seattle. We all speak English.
Some of us better than others.
Yeah. We're super easy to get a hold of. I mean, like Spencer mentioned, you call 887-DEPLOY, talk to somebody on the phone, email.
Yeah, great. And John wants to know, what are some of the updates that the new release are going to include? Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, so roadmap-wise, you want to jump on that, Spencer?
Sure. So we've got a lot of things we want to accomplish. Some of them have been housekeeping things, and some of them have been new feature adds. But directly on the roadmap would be a console-based type of feature where you can do push deployments. Certainly the Pixie booting feature and not relying on WDS would be something that we're adding. Wake on LAN comes up from time to time. Those are all things that customers want to do, and we'll get there. We're working on it. The initial thing was to kind of engineer to the lowest common denominator, and that's been really helpful for customers where we can do this, self-contained offline deployment without any dependencies. Now that we've got that licked, there's a lot of people that have bigger infrastructures and want to do push deployments and stuff. So we're working on it. It's coming.
Great. Thank you, Spencer. Cam wants to know, he says, you haven't fully explained how your driver solution is different how I could go to Dell, import their driver, pack into MDT, and deploy to a new computer, 2-hour max turnaround time.
Yeah, so you could go from 2-hour max turnaround to 10 minutes to download a platform pack that's pre-built with all the driver support from Dell that you need. Another thing to mention, a lot of those times you go and download that driver repository from Dell, and it's the initial drivers when the system released. So it's all Rev 01. That's brand new drivers. As that machine ages, those drivers are updated over time to fix maybe docking issues or something with power changes. So going from sleep back to a live system where maybe the video driver will just leave the screen blank. Those drivers are usually not encompassed in that initial download package from Dell.
So net, the work that you would do in those 2 hours is already pre-built and done for you. So you just download one self-contained package that has all the latest and greatest you need for that device.
Take the challenge and you'll find out firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, Dell's the only one that has provided those single cab files for download. We provide them for lots of manufacturers, right? And yeah, to Eric's point, Dell's gotten better about updating those cab files, but they do tend to lag behind. And you know, honestly, if you were to compare our driver packages and those cabs, they're not the same thing. Dell's has many excessive files that are not required, and I know that sounds funny because you would think Dell would have their driver sets nailed, but they really don't. And so that driver download is much larger than it needs to be, and our packs are about as clean as they get.
Okay, thank you, Alan. We have someone, Richard's asking, is there any significant value in switching if you've already invested in getting MGT and SCCM to work for your environment? What is the learning curve on Smart Deploy?
Within an hour to two, you should be able to download it and walk through a proof of concept and go end to end and see a deployed machine without any additional hardware or infrastructure or anything. So it's really short. The biggest value for people that have gotten MDT and SCCM and stuff going is the reduced skill set required to keep your images current and up to date and deal with all of the device drivers. We didn't even talk about deltas and some of the other patented technology that we have on WIM in the session, but those are the places that customers talk about the biggest value and the better together story with Smart Deploy and System Center, and you know, getting away from MDT because the people that are being tasked with doing that job don't have to be as talented and so forth, and they're faster.
Yeah, and it might be worth reading the complete study. It talks about some of those things like updates and the amount of time it takes to perform updates with our product versus the others, and that's another place where MDT might be a little bit more time consuming, especially as you bring new hardware into the inventory and so on and so forth. So I think there would be some significant ongoing time savings for making a switch.
Great, thank you. The questions keep coming in, so like I said, we'll stick around for a few more minutes and keep answering questions, but if we don't get to you, we will certainly follow up with you and answer any questions that you have. We have Dave asking, what options are available for automating system configuration and installing applications after the initial OS is laid down on the hardware?
Yeah, so kind of recommendation-wise with application sequencing after deploying the image, as you do that, it increases the deployment time exponentially. So you get down to a least common denominator in the image of installed applications, and then you can use task sequences as part of the deploy, and then in Smart Deploy to script on those additional application installations.
Thank you, Eric. Another question from Cam. It looks like we're just trying to clarify a little bit with SCCM. So he says, so if I had SCCM in a global environment, I would need to deploy one Smart Deploy image per model. He's trying to clarify there what exactly that, how Smart Deploy works with SCCM.
Yeah, so logically and physically separate are the images and the driver packages. So you can have one image that contains, one single WIM that contains all of the applications and OS and everything that you want. And then separately, you can manage all the drivers. So we store drivers in what we call a platform pack. That's also single instance storage, and you can have a single pack that contains device drivers for everything in your environment. So you can use it separately by itself, or you can export all of those and suck them into SCCM as well.
Yeah, so ultimately, one image would take care of the entire inventory unless your strategy is to create different images based on software requirements for different divisions of the business or different worker roles, but that's part of the beauty, is that you can create one image one time and roll it out to everything indefinitely.
Great. And then Paul wanted to know, with the Smart Deploy Challenge, can it be used on multiple computers, or is it only for one master image? It's our fully functioning trial, so you can do as much or as little as you'd like, which is good. Let's see here. Can Smart Deploy install other applications in ISO or MSI file? From Anthony.
Yeah, so that was done, that's done through the task sequences. And you can target those application or ISO or MSI installs based on two different things. So as part of the platform packs, you can install software granularly at the hardware level. So you can say, I have this Latitude E6520 and I know I want to install this application on it. On the flip side of that, you can do it globally from an image perspective where it gets to any hardware.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up now. Like I said, we'll follow up with everyone whose questions we didn't get answered, and watch for that follow-up email tomorrow with the links to all of the study and the recording and everything. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know we went a little bit over on time, but we hope you found the information that we shared today valuable, and we certainly look forward to working with you. And check out the Smart Deploy Challenge. We're excited to see how that goes with everybody. So thank you very much.